الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. هيا على الصلاة هيا على الصلاة هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة وقد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
حق لا إله إلا الله. استووا اعتدلوا في السلطان استنشدوا الشوط. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. إن المتقين في جنات ونهر في مقعد صدق عند مليك مقتدر. بسم الله. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. إن ربك يعلم أنك تقوم أدنى من ثلثي الليل ونصفه وثلثه وطائفة من الذين معك والله يقدر الليل والنهار علم أن لن تحصوه فتاب عليكم فقرؤوا ما تيسر من القرآن علم أن سيكون منكم مرضى وآخرون يضربون في الأرض يبتغون من فضل الله وآخرون يقاتلون في سبيل الله فاقرؤوا ما تيسر منه وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وأقرضوا الله قرضا حسنا وما تقدموا لأنفسكم من خير تجدوه عند الله هو خير وأعظم أجرا واستغفروا الله إن الله غفور رحيم. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. So we had reached the portion of the Seerah where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam had basically he had told the early Muslims to migrate, and then he after that, he basically had, there were two migrations. We covered both of the migrations. And then we covered, then after the second migration happened, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the first major boost for the Muslims, which was the Islam of Hamza radiallahu anhu. Then, shortly after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave another boost to the Muslims, and that was the conversion of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, which literally happened later that week. There was only, if you look at the classical books of Seerah, the max that is mentioned is a week between the conversions of Abu Bakr the conversions of Hamza radiallahu anhu and the conversions of Umar radiallahu anhu. Now, when it comes to Umar radiallahu anhu, I'm not going to go into too much detail, talk about him in too much detail, because inshallah, if Allah wills, we plan on having a separate series for the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in that, we will go into more detail of his life. However, I'll mention a few things. Umar radiallahu anhu, obviously his father was Khattab, and his father was known to be a very harsh man. His father basically used to be in charge of herding camels. So different people of Quraysh would have Khattab take care of that, and then Khattab, he would have Umar take care of that. And Umar talks about how harsh his father was from a young age, and he used to say that if I used to do something wrong, my father would severely beat me, and if I didn't do anything wrong, my father would still rebuke me. Right. So this is the toughness and the harshness that he grew up in. The tribe. So obviously the nasab and the lineage is attached to the father. So he is from a tribe called the Banu Adi. The Banu Adi were a smaller sub-tribe of the Quraysh. However, his mother was from the Banu Makhzum. And for those of you who were here in our previous classes, we mentioned that the Banu Makhzum were one of the three main tribes, the three big tribes of Quraysh. You have the Banu Hashim, you have the Banu Makhzum, and then you have the Banu Umayyah. Okay, these are the big three tribes, and then there are sub-tribes. So the Banu Adi, they were close in relation to the Banu Makhzum. So at times you would notice that people from the Banu Makhzum would marry into the Banu Adi, and vice versa. So through his mother being from the Banu Makhzum, Umar radiallahu anhu was related to Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl was his uncle from his mother's side, because Abu Jahl was the cousin of his mother. Okay, and so Umar radiallahu anhu, he grew up. He actually learned to read and write. He was a very people know him about being a very harsh and strict individual, but he was also a very intelligent individual. And he was one of the very few individuals in that society that knew how to read and write. If I were to just give an example, if the population of the Quraysh, let's just say it was around 3,000, right? Let's just an example, right? It was 3,000 people that were living in Mecca. Out of those 3,000 people, I'd say maybe 200 people knew how to read and write. Okay, so now you guys understand, right? What the ratio is. So if a person knew how to read and write, you were seen as an intelligent individual. You were seen as somebody that possesses high IQ. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he was extremely tall, extremely broad-shouldered, had an immense amount of strength in his upper portion of his body. They said that if you would see him from a distance, you would think that he's riding on a horse. That's how tall he was, right? And Umar radiallahu anhu was, from a young age, he used to run security for the Quraysh, they have the Rihlat al-Shita'i wal-Sayf. They have the two big caravans. They have the caravan of the summer and the caravan of the winter. These are the two big trade caravans. The entire sustenance of Mecca depends on the success of these two caravans. That the trade happens, they get whatever goods they need to get. They get whatever darahim and the danani that they need to get. This is what this depends on. So Umar radiallahu anhu, the Quraysh, he used to run security for those caravans. So he obviously used to get paid for that as well. He used to get paid for that, and from that he became a little businessman. He became a businessman, and he had some wealth. He became somewhat of a wealthy individual, but that was due to the money he made from running security for the Quraysh. At the same time, the Quraysh would have a lot of competitions with other tribes. They would have poetry competitions. They would have wrestling competitions. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he was picked. He was, because of his strength, he was chosen to be one of the people that would represent the Quraysh when they would go and wrestle other in wrestling tournaments. Also, he was one of the ambassadors of Quraysh. I mentioned that there were a few other ambassadors as well. He was one of the main ambassadors of Quraysh, particularly because he knew how to read and write. Right, so that was something that was like I said, if you knew how to read and write, you were seen as a very intelligent individual. And he actually saved the Quraysh out of a few situations by going and working out and hashing out the details and calming down the situation. Obviously, the Quraysh wants someone like him as a representative because he had a very intimidating look, right? He was big, he was strong. So the person that's representing you, you want that individual to have some of the really good qualities, correct? You don't want some like just random individual representing you. So it was such a high maqam. I mean, he was given such a high level that even though he was not the leader of the Banu Adi, and he was not from one of the major tribes of Quraysh, the fact that he was the ambassador of the Quraysh, he was allowed to sit in the inner circle of the Quraysh. Okay, and what I mean by the inner circle, I mean when they used to sit in the Dar al-Nadwa and the different leaders, Abu Jahl, Walid ibn Mughira, Abu Sufyan, when all these leaders would get together and discuss the matters, and they would discuss how to oppose the Prophet ﷺ, they would allow Umar ibn al-Khattab to sit there because even though he was from the youngsters, even though he was from, there were two groups. There were the older individuals, like I said, Abu Jahl and Walid ibn Mughira, who was extremely old, Abu Lahab, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, who was the master of Bilal. He was also the chief of his own tribe. These were the older individuals. That was one group. The second group were the sons of these individuals. So you have Ikrimah bin Abi Jahl, you have, for example, Khalid bin Walid, you have Safwan bin Umayyah. They had their own group, okay? And it was the majority of the first group, they were killed in Badr. The majority of the time after Badr, until the Fath Makkah, the people that were opposing the Prophet ﷺ were from the second group, the youngsters, the sons of these leaders of Quraysh, and these great leaders and people of Quraysh. And who was leading them was the youngest leader out of all of Quraysh, Abu Sufyan. Right? I mentioned how Abu Sufyan, he basically united the Quraysh under one leadership after the death of all the other leaders. He took this to his own advantage. And he decided that it was basically decided that Abu Sufyan is the main chieftain. So these are the two groups. So Umar radiallahu anhu, because of the respect he had in the eyes of the elders, he would sit with the other group, the older group as well. So now Umar radiallahu anhu, he was very loyal, right? At times when somebody is blindly loyal to something, it basically it can also harm them as well. He was extremely loyal to his tribe. He was extremely loyal to the customs of Quraysh. What is the Prophet ﷺ doing? What is Islam doing in their eyes? It's breaking off the custom. It's saying that it's okay that a slave has the same rights as a leader of Quraysh. That's what it's saying, right? It's saying that you cannot cheat somebody. It's saying that there is no systems in society. Everyone is equal. It is saying that you cannot you can't cheat somebody, you can't use interest. There's so many different laws that the Quraysh were used to living their lives in, that now Islam is coming and abolishing. And then also what it's doing, it's breaking up in their eyes, it's breaking up families. If a son accepts Islam, the mother and father won't accept him. If a brother accepts Islam, then it's causing tension in the household. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he had a good heart. Okay? His concern was not out of jealousy of the Prophet ﷺ. He did not oppose the Prophet ﷺ like Abu Jahl out of jealousy or out of hatred. It was more out of a concern for his people. He used to think that what's going on? And this would send him into a rage at times. Like, why is it that our own system, our family system is being broken. And this is what caused him, later on we'll read, that when he had volunteered, when Abu Jahl finally got said that we need to kill. And this is something that they did a lot. They spoke about killing the Prophet ﷺ. This is one of the main times they spoke about it. And Umar radiallahu anhu, that is why he ended up volunteering at that time, because he was so angry that he was seeing, first of all, the entire group that left Abyssinia, right? It wasn't just slaves, it was their own individual relatives. So, like I said, it was not right, or it was weird at the time that you leave your city. So leaving your city was very embarrassing. So the fact that he saw that his fellow neighbors are leaving his city, he's pinpointing this all back to who? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, Muhammad is the reason why this is all happening. This is what his thought process was. Now, one thing about Umar radiallahu anhu, he says that one time he was watching, and he narrates this after he accepted Islam. He was watching Abdullah bin Mas'ud getting pestered by some of the Qurayshis, right? Because Abdullah bin Mas'ud, remember, he was from Yemen. He was not a Qurayshi. He was a servant, right? So they were messing around with him and they pushed him to the ground. So Umar radiallahu anhu, even though, like I said, he was very harsh, he had a soft heart inside. He went up to, and this is right before he accepted Islam. He went up to Abdullah bin Mas'ud and he helped him up. And Abdullah bin Mas'ud looked at him and he said, Wallahi, you are the better of the two individuals. Now, Umar radiallahu anhu, he got confused. He said, he didn't know what he was talking about, but he just looked at him and just walked away. Later on, this is the dua of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ said that, Ya Allah, strengthen Islam to either Abu Jahl or Umar ibn al-Khattab. So Abdullah bin Mas'ud said, I heard the Prophet making this dua. So then when he had that interaction with the Qurayshis and Umar helped him up, picked him up from the ground, he told us, Umar, he didn't really think of anything of it, he just shook it off. Then what happened was, Umar, before accepting Islam, he was a very, very heavy drinker. And so what he did is that he said, one night, I really wanted to go drink some alcohol. So I went to the area where they serve it, and there was no one there. So he's like, okay, then I just wanted to go sit with somebody to speak, but I noticed everybody had gone to their houses. So I went to the haram and I started doing tawaf. He started doing tawaf. It's kind of funny, right? He went from looking for something to drink, and then that's how they were back then, right? The tawaf is just like a normal thing, right? Then he's okay, fine, I can't drink anything, I'll go do tawaf, right? So he says that I saw in a distance Muhammad sallallahu, he was sitting there and he was reading the Quran. He was reciting Quran. So I hid and I was like, let me listen to what is causing so much ruckus in our town. So he starts listening to the Quran, the Prophet sallallahu, he's reciting Surah Haqqa. And then Umar becomes mesmerized and he says, now he thinks to himself, he says, this is the words of a poet. This is the words of poetry. Now, it was such a coincidence, and this is, subhanAllah, what we say is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was indirectly speaking. The Prophet ﷺ did not know that Umar was there. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was indirectly speaking to Umar through the Prophet ﷺ. Because he said that, and he narrates this after he accepts Islam. He said that when my thought, it came that this Quran is a sha'ir, right? This is the saying of a poet. Then the Prophet ﷺ, because he was reciting out loud, right after that, the verse, the Prophet ﷺ recited, right? Then he said, I thought to myself, okay. He said, I went back, right? I got shocked. How does he know what I'm thinking, right? Then he said, he's a soothsayer, he's a magician. Then what's the next ayah? Right? Then he became even more mesmerized. And he said, so what is it then? And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? This is verily a revelation from your Lord. Now, Umar radiallahu anhu says that this was the first seed that was planted in my heart. However, I still shook it off. I didn't really take it that seriously, but I was gonna approach and confront Muhammad that night, but the Quran mesmerized me to the point where I decided to go back, right? Then next day, what happens? The Abu Jahl, they finally get together and said, we have to do something. We have to think of something. And someone gave the idea, okay, we need to just kill him. Just go and kill Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then we'll deal with the consequences afterward. And Abu Jahl is the one who was always the driving force, right, behind all of this. He said, I will give, a certain amount of camels, which was a huge amount of wealth at that time, a couple hundred camels he promised, and a couple of bags filled with silver. So Umar radiallahu anhu, being a young guy, he said, this is a lot of money, I could even make more of a fortune. So he's like, okay, I'll do it, right? So he goes and he starts heading toward the house, toward the Prophet ﷺ, looking for the Prophet ﷺ. On the way, he meets Nu'aym bin Abdullah, who sees that Umar has a sword and he looks irritated. So he asks him, where are you heading? Nu'aym himself was a Muslim, he was a Sahabi, but he was kind of secret at the time. So he just asked him, where are you heading? He said, I'm heading to, I'm going to go find Muhammad. He's caused so much discord in our our families and in our tribe. So then Nu'aym bin Abdullah, he immediately had to somehow switch the situation. He saw what was going on. So he said, okay, why don't you go and see the situation at your own house? Your sister, she accepted Islam as well. Why don't you go? And then, so now he knew that this would throw off Umar ibn Khattab from going directly to the Prophet ﷺ. So Umar, he immediately went to his sister's house. When he got there, he heard them whispering, or he heard some talking. What was going on was inside the house, Khabbab ibn Arab, the same Khabbab who eventually became freed, the one that was dragged on remember I told you he used to be dragged on coals, right? He was teaching Fatima bint Khattab, who was the sister of Umar ibn Khattab, and her husband, who is Sa'id bin Zayd. Sa'id bin Zayd is one of the Ashra Mubashara that we don't talk much about. He is the son of Zayd bin Amr ibn Nufayl. If you guys remember, Zayd bin Amr ibn Nufayl were one of the few people before the Risala, before the coming of the Prophet who rejected idolatry. The Prophet said about him that on the Day of Judgment, he will be his own nation, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless him with the two Jannahs, right? So he was the cousin of Umar ibn Khattab. So Umar, he knocks on the door. They see it's Umar, so they quickly hide Khabbab and they hide the script, the paper the Quran was written on. This shows right now, I want to pause it real quickly, the importance of learning and teaching. What was the job once you accepted Islam? You learn and you go and teach to others. These people are still technically new Muslims, right? They just accepted Islam a couple of years ago, some of them a couple of months ago, some of them a couple of weeks ago. But right away, the Prophet ﷺ would put them to work. He would put them to work. Every single Sahabi was a da'i. Every single Sahabi was a caller toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what our religion is about. Preaching the truth, whether it be through our actions or through our words. So Umar he comes in and he says, what were you guys doing? And she said, nothing, we were talking. However, Umar was very smart. He said, no, I heard you were reciting something. And they said nothing. So Sa'id bin Jubayr, he got in the way of Umar radiallahu anhu, Sa'id bin Zayd. And Umar he was about to smack him, but his sister got in the way. He ended up smacking his sister. And then when he saw that she started bleeding, she said, "Okay, if you want to kill us, Umar, to kill us. We're gonna stick to our religion." Then he felt bad. When he saw, again, I told you, he was very harsh, but he had a soft heart. He saw his sister in that condition, and then he said, okay, show me what you are reciting. She said, no, you have to go and you have to make wudu. You have to go and you have to cleanse yourself. So he went, he took a shower, he came back, and he began to read the ayahs of Surah Taha. So the seed was planted by the ayahs of Surah Haqqa. Remember I said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was kind of indirectly talking to him? So then when he read the first couple of ayahs of Surah Taha, he said, this has to be the words of some amazing Lord. So he said, take me to Muhammad. So he went to the Prophet ﷺ, and mind you, none of the companions at the time know that Umar ibn Khattab is coming here to accept Islam, because he was so mesmerized, he didn't realize that he was still holding his sword. So he's walking to the house of Dar al-Arqam, where all the Muslims are, right, and holding his sword. But it's when an individual gets so affected by something, or they go through an experience, they're not aware of their surroundings, right? They're not aware of what they're doing or what they're holding. That's what he wasn't. So he didn't realize that he was holding a sword. So when he knocks on the door, they look through the people and they see it's Omar. They go and they're concerned. They said Omar is holding a sword. He's at the door. They thought He's coming here to do some harm. So then Hamza radiallahu anhu was there, and he said, don't worry. If he comes in and he wants good, then we'll let him go. And if not, then we'll just kill him with his own sword. That's it. So remember, Hamza radiallahu anhu was there with them. So when they opened the door, Rasulullah went and he grabbed Umar ibn Khattab. He said, Umar, why have you come here? What are you doing? Right? He literally said, what are you doing to him? And this was the Prophet saying it because of how much he wanted him to accept Islam. He grabbed him and he grabbed him by the collar and shook him. He said, if you continue to go the path you're on, you will be destroyed. I'll tell you that right now. And then that's where Umar radiallahu anhu, he accepted Islam. And the Prophet they said that we never heard the Prophet scream Allahu Akbar or do the takbir louder than he did on that day when Umar ibn Khattab accepted Islam. And then Umar ibn Khattab, being who he was, he began going. Everyone else accepted Islam in secret. Umar ibn Khattab, who does he go to first? He went right to Abu Jahl. And he went and he told him, he said, I've accepted Islam. And Abu Jahl closed the door in his face. And then he began going around and telling every single tribesman. Until it became a huge, they're basically, because of he was such an influence, he had so much influence because he was from the Adi and he had a lot of relatives in the Makhzum. So one of the strongest tribes of Quraysh were basically on good relations with him. So if he accepts Islam, knowing who he is, his personality, it's a huge thing. So the streets of Makkah, they turned into chaos. People tried to fight with him. People trying to fight with members of his tribe until As bin Wa'il came and calmed everybody down, who was the father of Amr ibn al-As. As bin Wa'il, he never accepted Islam, but he was his tribe and the Banu Adi were close. So he said that, are you guys that dumb that you guys are literally going to kill a person because of what he believes in now, even though he's from your own tribe? Again, As bin Wa'il, what logic is he using? He's using the logic of nationalism. You see how hardcore nationalism was into them. So then Umar ibn Khattab, he accepts Islam, and then after this, one thing I want to say, there's so many things about Umar ibn Khattab, and again, like I said, inshallah, I hope inshallah we can have one whole lecture just on him. But the Prophet said in the narration of Bukhari that there are a few people from every ummah. There are those individuals, few individuals who malaika come and they speak to. They're not prophets, but the malaika come and they converse with them. Okay? He said that if there is anybody from our ummah who has received that honor, it would be Umar ibn Khattab. Alright? So Umar ibn Khattab has his so many fada'il, and inshallah, like I said, we'll discuss those in a different class. And then inshallah, we'll discuss what happens now after this. This is all going to lead into the boycotts. Because now they've become the Quraysh have become helpless now. There's so all these big personalities of Quraysh are accepting Islam, so now they become desperate, and this leads to the boycott. Then we'll cover that inshallah in the next class. Please keep our Muslim brothers and sisters in the du'as.
Your things back?
No.
Oh, you just had some stuff. Okay.